Thanks, guys. And thank you so much, Lori. That was really a nice introduction. I want to start off by thanking everyone who's here tonight for coming out in the rain, and everybody who's brought me here. KSA has just been really a great host and a really exciting place to visit and a really exciting place to be a part of. I want to also thank my students for helping to be so courageous as to step out of their comfort zones and to kind of try this out with me. It really is like a laboratory and an experiment for the school and myself, but they've been really great and they're really on board, and the residents and neighbors we've met in Smoketown have been nothing but really positive and polite, which is way more than we could have asked, and they're just really great people. So thanks to all of them. If you here, you probably saw the postcards and the posters that said, you know, what is socially engaged art? Ask Ryan, or Ryan will tell you all about it. And I just want to start out by, I am a practicing artist and sometimes educator, and I love being a part of urban life and cities and just meeting new people, but I'm not an academic expert on any subjects. I leave it to those people to write great books. And so this is the book that we've been using for our class, written by this excellent artist named Pablo Helguera. It's a great book, 10 bucks, short, sweet, it's really great, pick it up. So I just want to say, that's the place to go. We're going to talk about some of the points I've learned from reading that book and stuff for the class. What I feel like I can expand on a little bit more are some of these points. What is Smoketown Social Club that we keep talking about? How have I sort of used social relationships and practice in some of the work I've made and the organizing projects I've done, and why do I think that that stuff's so important to the education of a young artist? So, Social Club. Lori said I came here for one site visit in December, and I was fortunate to be pointed in the direction of Network Center for Community Change, and I met this young woman, Pam, who is just this wonderful young organizer from Network Center for Community Change. She walked me all over Smoketown. This is a picture of us in front of the construction project that is Shepherd Square, where there was Shepherd Square. It was housing projects torn down. It's part of a Hope 6 project to revitalize Smoketown. I've not been here long enough to tell you if that's like, I don't think it's really all positive or all negative. I think it's really like a very gray area, and I've heard a lot of strong opinions on both sides, but Pam showed me around this day and told me about her perspective on the community, what she's been working on. We also saw places like this that aren't Shepherd Square, but are parts of Smoketown, right? And it's like, you know, something was happening here, something's not happening here right now, but it also like, you know, it's a curious sight, and it makes you wonder what's going on, and you also go like, man, that looks like a really cool painting, kind of, if you squint your eyes right. But it also looked pretty familiar, because this is a picture of a block that I ride my bike past with my son when I pick him up from school in Baltimore. It's not that distant, it's not that different visually, and maybe like economically what led to it. Again, there's another building from Baltimore, and I couldn't really tell any of those apart so much, especially when you look at this block from Baltimore that's being torn down to make way for new mixed development houses. It's like the same shot. It's the same situation, right? But it's not that simple, because I don't really know, what I don't know are the people who lived in Shepherd Square. I don't know the people that live in Smoketown. I don't know their backgrounds and what's going on with the way they live their lives and the things they value. So some parts are exactly the same, other parts aren't. One thing that stood out to me, though, and seemed like a way to get to know that stuff, was this little church in the background of this photograph. I remember walking past the church and thinking, that just seems like this weird little gem that just stuck out. And I turned back, and I knew we weren't going to go back past it, so I photographed it through the fence. And the brick building on your left is the original PCC, Presbyterian Community Center, where Muhammad Ali once trained, and Etta Hamilton had built a sculpture out of it in the 90s, I believe, or late 80s. But that little white church just looked different than anything else, and I kept wondering about I found out more about this white church on my own when I was researching from Baltimore, but also when I came back here. This church had been a tiny, beautiful little building that housed a small African-American Catholic congregation. And there's not a ton of churches and congregations like that in the country and around. And it had been a thriving community up until maybe the 90s when the diocese closed the building. The building sat empty, but it stayed there. And in the early 2000s, working with Youth Build, the Metro Housing Authority rehabbed that building, built this side onto it, and turned it into a community center. So I thought that was like, I didn't even know that, but when I started kind of becoming interested, but as the path led me to find that out, I got really, really interested. This photo is actually from a bike ride with Tom Owen, who stopped and made a point to come here. I hadn't told him what we were doing, but he rode this bike ride by the building and talked about what a nice little architectural gem and historical piece of the city it is. So it felt really like a nice honor to have him sort of point that out. Our class, the Smoketown Social Club, has occupied this building for the last 3.5 weeks, and we will continue to occupy it for another 3 weeks to make 6 weeks. What we do there doesn't maybe look like art class all the time. It might just look like we're sweeping or building, you know, or it might just look totally bizarre, like why is this young lady organizing trash on the sidewalk? And it might look like what we're making is more like making friends and making relationships than making art. But this has sort of been the investigation process as we came. And it was cold out, and not that many people were outside, but we put our gloves on and went outside and cleaned up what we could, and sort of just got to know the place by being there. I want to read, the lights got pretty dark, but I wanted to read one quote from the Pablo Higuera book that I brought up. Social practice avoids both the modern role of the artist as an illuminated visionary and the postmodern version of the artist as a conscious critical being. Instead, the term democratizes the construct, making the artist into an individual whose specialty includes working with society in a professional capacity. So when you start thinking about an artist like that, you stop thinking about maybe having to be in a studio all the time, and you start talking about being outside and sort of the kind of networking that you hear happening so much. Like, that's kind of a perfectly good thing for an artist to be a part of, and it can actually be a professional way of working. I want to introduce you to two of my students, Justin and Rob. I think that they kind of exemplify part of that message by taking things that they really find personal and making them a social project. So they both like to draw comics and make images, and they've applied that into their work. In an attempt to understand the neighborhood a little bit more, Rob did a little bit of research and started making a comic book about it, or a storybook. He did sketches, started making more finalized pages. But of course, Rob can't know the whole story of Smoketown by himself, right? He is brand new as everybody else in the class, and he's just visiting. But there's no reason he shouldn't make this because of a somewhat limited perspective. He should still engage in the art making because people look to artists, as that quote said, as this shamanistic being, right? Like, just the act of Rob being on a sidewalk or being, showing these drawings off, people have totally glommed onto him. A 9-year-old talked to him for maybe like 2 hours on last Tuesday because they just couldn't believe that this guy could draw that well. What Rob did was turn that comic into a mini comic he could distribute to show people that, what you could do with a simple piece of paper, and then ask folks to include their own story. So there's an opportunity when that young man sits down and talks with him about his project to then sit with a blank sheet of paper, and Rob can work with him to make his own comic book page that tells his own experience in Smoketown. There's Rob and that young guy and his mom. Justin is this fabulous illustrator and animator, or I know you're interested in animation, but he's this just knockout cartoonist, right? But there aren't always a lot of opportunities to show off cartooning in art school. But everybody likes cartoons, and everybody is like fascinated by the process of someone being able to draw them. So Justin took the effort to build this handmade table specifically sized to his body. I don't even know if he realized how anchored maybe in some expanded sculpture practice he was getting into, but just that this thing is scaled to his knee height. The chair sits perfectly at his back. He's got a space underneath to hold his paper, and he pulls it out and he starts drawing people. And I think he must have made 10 characters and had 10 conversations in the process. Yeah, that happens at Six Flags every day, so why is that a special project? It's because there's no place for people to talk to art students in Smoketown, and there's no place for art students to start to learn about the community if we just walk in there. So by doing these kinds of projects, it's almost like the projects are completed once people participate. That's different than just a commercial venture. It's more of a way to get to know you. And if you're not going out there shaking hands with everybody you run into, this kind of art can totally help you do it. And I just think it's great that these guys use things they were passionate about to get to that point. Another quote I wanted to bring up that I think relates to Rob and Justin is, social practice obscures the discipline from which socially engaged art has emerged, art. It denotes the critical detachment from other forms of art making, primarily centered and built on the personality of the artist that is inherent to socially engaged art, which by definition is dependent on the involvement of others besides the instigator. So I think those guys really embodied that in that project, as has most of the class in all their explorations so far. This young lady was happy with the comic that Justin drew over. I wanted to talk about some other projects I've done that maybe try to explore that. So this is a little model I made of a park near my house in Baltimore. And it's right underneath of the Baltimore Museum of Art. It's a big, great art museum. And it's kind of down a hill. And I was talking about how we need to get more people using the park, more people out there. And we could use drawing and art to do that. And everybody said, well, why would we put art in the park? The museum's right there. They can go see it for free. And I was like, no, we need art that people can be a part of, but not be intimidated by, right? And as I kept talking about it, it just didn't seem to click. It made sense to me, but it didn't seem to click. So I went home and I built this model, and I took a bunch of pictures of it from different points of view. I was like, there's going to be music, and there's going to be like this projector you can draw on, and it makes the pictures really big, and there'll be like, you know, cool like walls that people can just write whatever they want on. Like, and that pyramid's kind of like the Baltimore version of like a Burr face. It's like everybody knows that. So people were like, oh, okay, I guess I kind of get it. Well, now I'm gonna kind of awkwardly switch over here. So it happened. It totally happened. We made some sculptures, and it was just as weird as the drawing or as the photographs. We made a light box that was dry erase that anybody could sort of come and draw on. And I asked this sound artist I know to make something, and he made a wall that every time you touched it, it made a different tone. He's scanning a young man's hands into an Xbox Kinect system. This guy just loves to draw. He comes to any event we put on, and he just loves drawing. But the difference between, he'd sit here tonight drawing on his lap, but with the projector, he can do that, and then take his picture next to it, and everybody can see every mark he decides to make. Again, this is like, I think some of that is that this work wouldn't happen without the people who come to the event and participate, and it also sort of democratizes art in a way that people can just explore in a public way, and it becomes like as much of a language. The drawing itself becomes as much of a language as talking to one another. It doesn't have to happen in like some kind of temple. At the end of the night, we lit sparklers and had a photographer do time-lapse photography and capture you know, what people were able to draw. Go O's. So artists, non-artists working together. On a little bit less of a little sadder note, this story starts. There was some violence in my community that was repeat gun violence in a certain area not far from my house, and I was fed up. I was just like, I'm so fed up, I'm so frustrated, and I made this, I cut paper and made this and photocopied it and started putting it around. And after a couple weeks, when I just realized they were kind of blowing away and getting worn down, I was like, I gotta do something better than this. At the bottom where it says like, let's live together, I said, let's forget this kind of negative sign, let's really live together. And I painted this on the side of my house. Block party, come on, like 3 weeks from now, just, you know, we'll put the grills out, you bring your food, and come check it out. And I gathered as many people as I could, and they came. Again, like people at block parties every day, what makes this art? Is it just because an artist is doing it? Well, partially, and it also, I think, we employed art to specifically to bring people together and specifically to try to affect change by just having a positive gathering. It wasn't just, you know, an anniversary, and it wasn't just a birthday, but it was specifically we are getting together to have fun. So there was a band, there were puppeteers on the stage. This is an artist named Valeska Popolo who manned my lemonade cart made out of a rain barrel. And these are people who didn't know each other before, just meeting and getting together. The band let the kids play their instruments when they weren't playing. People brought their vegetables and they brought some hamburgers to cook. Again, there's a whole group of people down there by the food, and they're looking up, watching the puppets happen off of my porch, and another musician down below. So it was this great gathering, completely diverse, and it was all in the name of art. And I think, you know, I was setting up for the little art-barbecue we had over at the Smoketown Social Club a couple days ago, and I was putting this grill we got together, and somebody was like, well, I don't know what you're doing. I thought this was an art project. And I was like, I think a grill is probably one of the best community organizing tools you could have, and people never walk away from it. And so that was a really great afternoon. Excuse me. Later last summer, my wife and I started building these boxes to go at the big art festival in Baltimore called Artscape. And the best thing about Artscape, it's kind of like, maybe like, nothing compares to Derby, I guess, but like it's like sort of like just this big time when you can go and you can look at art and drink in the streets, and half of the art's pretty terrible and a lot of it's really good. And our friend puts on this show in a parking garage, and we love making work for it because it means we get to hang out there the whole time. But the problem when you have 2 kids is like, well, how do you keep your kids entertained the whole time? You know, I can bring a folding chair and my red cup, but I don't have something to do with the kids. So we started building these boxes. And the boxes became a playground that we thought people could move around. And it took off, we called it the Great Indoors, and it just took off. And adults played with it, kids played with it, everybody played with it. And again, this is something that kind of like wasn't active until people actually participated in it, but it changed every day as well. One day we came back, we went to get dinner, and we knew there was going to be some kind of event. We came back and they had rearranged the entire thing to be a DJ platform for a like a hip hop concert that was going on from the Baltimore Mixtape Project. So that was just a little glimpse into my life and some of the ways I think social practice has helped me, but what does that mean at the Smoketown Social Club? Those projects are all pretty lighthearted and fun and bring people together, and it's been hard for us, I think, to achieve that coming here. one, I don't know as many people and I'm new, and two, it's been cold, and three, Smoketown's a rough place. Like somebody told me that the reason nobody's coming over to our church isn't because Shepherd Square is not there, but they're saying that when Shepherd Square was there, the cops sort of hassled people to even go near it because they figured they were buying drugs or selling drugs. So just that street we're on, we're looking at where that project happened, and you know, we don't realize, because we're so new, that it's like socially, and you know, it's kind of mentally present for people not to even attend. But what we have been doing is exploring, learning. This is at Mazik Middle School, this like amazing farmer's market mural. It's totally hidden by this giant parking lot. Sort of talking and bouncing ideas off of each other. And you can, it's been cold, so Shelby's all bundled up there. And trying to get it out and get the word out. So Red's giving a shout out at Network Center for Community Change's Network Night. We've been trying to transform the space a little bit. We kind of figure as we get the word out and as we're there, you know, we really look at this place as like a pop-up cultural center, or like a small temporary kind of container for some art. It's not that the art wasn't there, but we're going to sort of like bring what we can and try to like fit it in and around this box of the social club. So we couldn't paint the walls, but we hung up colored paper, and we didn't have a screen to show slides and movies on, so we made one. Here we're experimenting with some cut paper shadow puppets, made a map of the neighborhood. And then we're making projects to be outside at these kinds of barbecues and stuff like I've been talking about. We had a small little trial run last Tuesday. Kyle here is making a mural. On one side is a chalkboard, and the other side is a map of the community that you can sort of mark your place in. And by the end of the night, this was covered with drawings, and we hope it keeps collecting more. Red made a ping pong table, balance board, like game table thing. It was a lot of fun. Heather made a tic-tac-toe game. And these are, like, we specifically went for participatory kind of carnival themed stuff to get people to come. And we cooked food while it was going on. So I think we've just started tipping the edge of participation. And unfortunately, you know, the class is kind of half over, and I feel like we're there. We're just touching on it, but it's sort of happening. And I do think that we've been successful in sort of carrying on this idea of this little gem in the neighborhood, and this, I started thinking of the kind of pop-up idea as this like arc, and that it's sort of trying to hold on to like some of the stories or the things that were important or are important to neighbors, and we're not really there to curate what it is, but to sort of collect material as it comes in. And as we were having that barbecue on on Tuesday, this guy came over and started talking to us and telling us that he used to go to this church, and that his mother raised him in the church, and it was a really important part of their life. And it turned out he was Zephyr May Miller's son. Zephyr May Miller was an artist from Louisville who did a lot of fashion work, I guess. She was one of the original bag ladies of Louisville. And she, I didn't realize, raised her kids there. And she also had encouraged Ed Hamilton to make the sculpture in Shepherd Square. He couldn't get over what we were doing. He loved every bit of what we were doing, and he started asking how he could be a part of it. So I think we're like on the way to start, now that people know it's going on, to really start like taking in more material. But I'm also thinking about how to see the project through myself, and how to maybe continue something without having to sustain a cultural center. I was really adamant about not wanting to make any kind of permanent work that needed to be maintained by KSA or the community, or fall on the backs of somebody else to raise money for or redo in a couple of years. And this notion of pop-up and transitory and the arc all sort of like started playing together in my mind, I guess. And it seemed like this sort of like river community kind of thing. And it seems kind of like a Louisville thing when I learned about the history more. And I'm also taken by the the sort of personality and individualness of these shotgun houses. And then I was surprised to learn that they were kind of based a lot on architecture shanty boat houses. I just love the way these remind me of row houses in Baltimore, and they're so dense together, but they still remain individual, and they still seem like that box and that vessel for a story. I also like the architectural details. This isn't the best example, but you find this like variation in wood architecture on each of the houses, and I've heard that some of that came from men that helped build, like craftsmen that helped build the riverboats, being able to bring some of that skill home and personalize their own house. So for my part, as we continue doing our events and the students are working on their final products to be presented at the next Art-BQ and the exhibition, I sort of wanted to create something that KSA could sort of use to continue this pop-up nature, but sort of was, I just wanted to take the time of being here to make something that was inspired from being here too. So I started drawing ideas of like, how do you make a picnic table, riverboat, cart, or something like that. And we're just working it out right now. I've been talking with one of the KSA students here named George, who has a background in carpentry and in cart building. And these are just sketches that we were coming up with in conversation, but through that conversation, again, like I learned more about George and the background he has than I would have if we weren't talking about art. And we're gonna hopefully build this thing and have it ready for that Art-BQ on the 24th. And the idea is that this cart can sort of contain an opportunity to organize, to sit, talk, eat, and also George has had this great idea of building in ways to display paintings and publications from the school, and it can be outreach. So I hope this thing can roll over to Smoketown, and it can roll over to Nulu, and it can move around like some kind of riverboat of sort of like the gift that KSA has given the city. So thank you. And I would love to talk more or answer any questions if anybody has any. Oh, I was just standing up.
Oh. That's amazing that you met Zephyr May's son.
Yeah, he's a really friendly guy.
What did he obviously was influenced, I would imagine, by her and how vibrant she was and how creative she was. So was he excited to see this art happen? He
said, and I'll try not to, like, I can't quote him directly, but like he started telling me that he seems like a guy, like, I don't know that he like wears art on his sleeve, but he wears the kind of community organizing spirit, and he wanted to take me right over to Mazik, and he wanted to take me down to Bates Memorial Church and get me connected. And he said he was walking his dogs in the neighborhood, and he turned around and saw those, I didn't show an image of it, I'm sorry, but Jasser, one of our students, built, or kind of memorialized Ed Hamilton's sculpture, the boxing gloves, out of found material in the fence. And he wove it through the fence, and it's sort of there, about the same scale as the original gloves. And this guy said, Jerry said, he was walking his dogs and he saw it, and he thought he'd like double take because he didn't think it was really there. And he knew that was like the first sign that something good was happening at the church. And that was really cool to me. And it was, you know, his mom used so much recycled material, I think it really hit home that Jasser did that. And he wanted to be involved in this. You know, we're trying to figure out how he can be involved on next Wednesday. And maybe in a way to memorialize his mom. I don't know. I have no idea where that'll go. So he was a good guy.
Is the
Go ahead.
Is it going to be available for the social club after your class is over?
There is no understanding that it would remain open. Our class is done, and we'll move out of there and kind of keep the refuse of what we made, the documents and the material here for the exhibition, unless anything is planned to go to like maybe a nonprofit or something like that. I would say that the Louisville Metro Housing Authority is loaned us the property, and like really generously, just let us be there for free. And I think it's probably good for them because it keeps somebody in there and it keeps something happening. And I think that they would be open to other people using it in a responsible way. But we are not, like I kind of said, I didn't want to set up a situation where there's a new after-school program that needs funding every year, or you got to raise money for it. It's like this is hopefully providing some new, fresh examples to just get some people in the neighborhood excited to keep doing the work themselves. Like, there's nothing about this that can't sort of be replicated, or just, it should be just inspiring, I think. So, hopefully.
I think you kind of answered my question. I wondered, you said it was a community center, and I just wondered what was going on there. It sounds like nothing.
Oh, yeah, so it was a community center. It was built to be a community center. There was 2 offices, a computer lab, which is, it's just an empty room, but it was a computer lab, and then a commercial kitchen, and there's a community garden behind it. And I haven't even seen the actual sanctuary space, I think, is a big unprogrammed room. But once Shepherd Square, or the Hope 6 project started happening at Shepherd Square, they shut it down. Once the residents weren't there to use it, they just locked the doors and have been using it for storage. So it's a shame that so much more was invested in this building and it hasn't been open. At the same time, they plan to reuse it once, I guess, the new Shepherd Square starts happening. They want to use it as like a sales office and stuff, but they've mentioned that until they start, they want people to use it. So I don't know.
Can you share, you talked earlier about the similarities between Baltimore and Louisville, the buildings. Mm-hmm. Could you share any of your impressions about Louisville? And, I know you have specific references, but
yeah.
things that surprised you.
I've been just blown away by how friendly and welcoming everybody's been. Everybody seems really excited to introduce you to the next person and be very helpful that way. And I have just become like really enchanted with the whole like river area and the park and just the presence of it there. And I think like the more I start learning about how maybe it's shaped the city, I become more interested in the city. So much about me, I'm not from Baltimore, and so much of my time spent there in college and just after was about like trying to understand it by learning its history and feel more relevant, I guess, by knowledge like that I could gain. So it's been fun to start doing that here, not as a 26-year-old, but or a 22-year-old or whatever you want to graduate. But it's nice to sort of bring that experience. And I think Louisville is just a really well-connected city, and it's very small geographically. It feels that way because it's flat and it's easy to get around. And I've been on a bike and just like loving every minute of speeding back and forth between the east and the west side. It's a great town. Is there more specific direction? All right. Well, thank you guys so much, and anytime. So.
What about your blog?
Smoketown Social Club. I won't type it while we're here, but smoketownsocialclub.tumblr.com, and it's on Facebook too. So we're just using it as a place to put up new photos and let people know what's going on. I think something I didn't quite get out at the beginning. I missed some of my notes, but I've been so grateful to the nonprofits that are here and situated around. To me, this kind of work, it can seem a little bit like un-art or how does it fit inside of the like art market, right? Well, the thing that's great is that it doesn't rely on the art market. Like you can go to art school and you can learn to talk to people and you can learn to have a really good critical eye and whatever skills you want to pursue, and you can go work in community, in government, in nonprofits as a professional. And I think it's really great to learn that nonprofits and like local institutions that serve people are out there. So we've worked with Youth Build a lot, Network Center for Community Change, Women in Transition, and to me the education of exposing the students to those groups and what they do is like as much a part of it as exposing them to other artists, I guess. So there's more out there I don't know, but and there's other artists that are doing good work with those groups. But the more I think you can teach a non-profit or learn together maybe with nonprofits ways to collaborate with artists, the more new work you can start to see and the more opportunity for artists you'll start to see. But it's sort of figuring out that language. Okay, thanks guys.